The land was torn apart. A big, rumbling steam shovel ripped through the earth, eating away at the hill. Great scoops of dirt were carved out of the ground. This was 1956. A new subdivision was being built in Scarborough. Rows of bungalows were set to appear on the land near Highland Creek. But on a spot not far from the corner of Lawrence Avenue and Bellamy Road, a large mound of earth stood in the way. Tabor Hill was nearly 20 meters high, so the steam shovel was brought in to flatten it. The extra dirt would be used in the construction of the nearby Highway 401. But as the digger tore away at the hill, the work suddenly came to a halt. The machine had uncovered something in the dirt. Tabor Hill isn't a natural formation. It's a 700-year-old mass grave. The steam shovel had uncovered an ancient ossuary. Inside were the bones of more than 500 people, laid to rest in the early 1300s. Centuries before subdivisions, skyscrapers, and highways covered the land where Toronto now stands, it was home to Wendat villages. Europeans would later call them the Huron. Hundreds of people lived together in each community. Their longhouses were surrounded by sprawling fields of maize. They hunted in towering forests of oak and pine, carefully managed by controlled fires. Those woods were filled with deer, wolves, cougars, and bears. Every fall, the rivers flowed thick with salmon. Bald eagles soared overhead. Enormous flocks of passenger pigeons filled the sky. Once every 10 to 30 years, when the natural resources surrounding a village had been depleted and needed time to recover, the Wendats would move to a new location. But first, they would mark the occasion with a huge festival, 10 days of feasting and gift-giving, capped by a burial ceremony. All those who had died of natural causes since the village last moved were laid to rest in one communal grave. When the first French missionaries showed up, they gave it the name most people use today, the Feast of the Dead. As the time of the great feast approached, the villagers paid a visit to the cemetery. Over the years, as the daily life of the village carried on, the graveyard had slowly filled with bodies. Every time someone died of natural causes, they were placed on a litter and carried to the cemetery, the villagers following in silence. The corpse was placed in a temporary coffin made of bark, to be kept on a wooden platform 2 or 3 meters above the ground. There, they rested for years on end, until it was time for the Feast of the Dead. Then, they were brought back out. The French missionary Jean de Brébeuf was invited to attend the Feast of the Dead in 1636. His account is deeply colored by his own prejudice, but it provides a detailed record of the event and the preparations that went into it, including the moment when the bodies were taken out of their bark coffins. After having opened the graves, Brébeuf explained in the Jesuit Relations, they display before you all these corpses on the spot, and they leave them thus exposed long enough for the spectators to learn at their leisure, and once for all, what they will be some day. The flesh of some is quite gone, and there is only parchment on their bones. In other cases, the bodies look as if they had been dried and smoked, and show scarcely any signs of putrefaction. And in still other cases, they are still swarming with worms. The missionary was amazed by the power of that sight, by the raw truth of death. He thought Christians could stand to learn from it. I do not think one could see in the world a more vivid picture or more perfect representation of what man is, he wrote. It is true that in France our cemeteries preach powerfully, but it seems to me that what our savages do on this occasion touches us still more and makes us see more closely and apprehend more sensibly our wretched state. The bodies were then prepared for reburial. The freshest corpses, those still writhing with maggots, were simply wrapped in beaver fur robes and placed on litters to be carried to the site of the new grave. But the others had their bones cleaned. The remaining flesh was stripped from their skeletons and burned in a fire. Then the body was taken apart The bones were bundled in beaver fur.